welcome down to the second episode of the Boydens Prop-Cast, and we've got a really fantastic episode coming up. We're joined by my colleague Gemma Williams.
Hi.
And she is an absolute expert, seasoned in sales progression, and we're really hoping to dive into kind of some of the secrets behind keeping a property sale on track and kind of what happens after the offer is accepted, because it's often kind of a bit of a unspoken about part of the business, isn't it, really, Gemma?
Yes, yeah.
But it is it's a major part of it. But what I thought I'd do to start off with again is kind of introduce Gemma, kind of a bit of her background and how she came to join ourselves 5 years ago, just before the dawn of the first lockdown, Gemma, wasn't it? I believe, which was quite a time of the property industry, really. But Gem, tell us, when did you first get involved with property? And I know that you've been through the ranks, and give us a little bit of an overview of your career, I suppose.
Of course.
Really.
So I joined nearly 15 years ago into the industry.
Yeah.
As a junior negotiator,
Mm-hmm.
and then progressed to assistant manager,
Mm-hmm.
and then had manager roles.
Yep.
And done all aspects of the job, really. So valuing properties, taking properties on, selling properties.
So a really rounded experience of everything, and I think that really has been quite pivotal in terms of your knowledge of that for the progression, because something comes up and you go, yep, I know about that. Whereas if you didn't have that front end experience, it would be a lot more different. I know Sophie as well, who is our other sales progressor. She did everything before, and then went down the progression route. But at one point, you were managing a whole branch in Brighton, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I was manager of Brighton for many years. Done really well there.
Yeah.
And then moved over to the Ipswich branch.
Mm-hmm.
And run that really well.
Corporate, wasn't it?
Yes,
Corporate firm.
Yeah.
But that some great training through that process, and it was. Is there anything you miss about that side of it, that front end side, or not particularly?
No. I'm quite happy what we're doing.
I think I'd miss the getting out there and meeting people, but I suppose you meet people all the time through the process of getting it from that offer stage all the way up to exchange completion, really, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Speak to clients sort of 2 or 3 times a week. So amount of running sales that we have, I'm on the phone all day long.
There's always new people to speak to. But so, Gem, what is the first thing or the first steps after an offer is accepted?
So once the offer's been accepted, the office will do their sort of money laundering checks, all the ID checks.
Yep.
Then the buyer and the seller have to instruct their solicitors who they want to use.
Yep.
Once that process is done and we have all the information back here in the office, we send out the sales memorandum.
Yep.
So sales memorandum goes to buyer, seller, and both solicitors. And then basically the solicitors communicate and the process starts.
Okay. And what does that kind of first process look like from the solicitors as such?
I mean, the solicitors will send out paperwork to buyer and seller. So the buyer will get all their paperwork and have to do all their money laundering checks again, all their ID checks. The seller will be sent their pack to fill out. So everything about the property, basically, fixtures and fitters form, the property information form, everything is in there. It's quite a hefty pack to fill out. And then once both clients send their paperwork back to the solicitors, that's when it really starts moving a bit more.
And I think we'll touch a little bit later on about a bit of a top tip about that first process to make that easier, but we'll speak about that a little bit later. But on a day-to-day kind of process, Gem, what is it getting on the phone and just making sure that everything's running? But I think there's so much more to it, really.
It's tailored for each client and each sale, to be honest. They're all different. So some sales I can just chase once a week, and then we chase it, see where it's up to, updating buyer and seller. Where some sales, it'll be a bit different. They'll be chased 2 to 3 times a week. And updating it. So it's chasing a sale, but it's also being assistant to the buyer and seller. You know, if they've had a survey and it's come back adverse, it's sorting that issue out with the buyer and seller, so there's a mutual agreement, and we can move on again. So it's all different sort of conversations for each sale, really.
And I suppose if you're acting, or not acting, but there's a buyer that maybe a first time buyer that hasn't been through the process before, there's a lot more kind of hand holding, kind of, you need to put your solicitor in receipt of funds for the searchers, you need to kind of pay for your mortgage survey to happen, all these kind of things, which often it's a little bit of a whirlwind when you're buying your first house, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that, holding hands for a first time buyer a lot more, and also a lot of our clients are of an older generation, maybe been in their property for the last 30, 40 years. And it is a real kind of guide, because of often, not all solicitors, but a lot of solicitors kind of think that that's not necessarily their job to teach them how to get through the process, that kind of thing. But what do sellers often not realise happens behind the scenes?
I think the biggest one is the expectation on the time frame. So sellers don't, because people don't buy and sell every day. They don't know how the process works. Is there their expectations on the time frames? A lot of sellers and buyers just assume it's a 3 or 4 week process, when it's not. It can be months, and if you've got chain, it can be very long months. So,
and leasehold elements into it, that kind of thing, extra inquiries. And the thing is that, I don't know, as myself, what I've experienced is that a seller will often think that, why is the buyer raising all these inquiries, where it actually often isn't. It's obviously the solicitor raising inquiries because they want to satisfy themselves, so there isn't anything to blame. But then there's also the mortgage company. They may well be kind of raising some inquiries even after the mortgage offers come in. And there's there's a lot more to it, rather than just buying a car. You go and have a look at it, and it's like, looks good. You do a quick check to make sure the mileage is fine, it hasn't been in any crashes, and you go, that's fine. There's so many people to satisfy in the system, isn't there?
You're completely right. Especially, as you say, a lot of sellers don't realise. They sometimes think their buyer's been difficult, but they don't realise their solicitors are raising inquiries, and then they've got to keep the lender satisfied. And especially if it's a leasehold, you've got all the management company, the landlord.
Management companies. Absolutely. There's a whole world of areas which can cause delays, which kind of brings me on to my next kind of question, which is what are the most common causes of those delays?
So I think some delays can be caused by certain solicitors. If a client has chosen a very big firm, there can be major delays, rather than the smaller firms. You find with some solicitor firms, if there's holiday or sickness, the work isn't picked up, and they have too much workload, so that can be a major delay.
So is this kind of a setup where you've got a solicitor, and then you've got a number of underlings that are running it, and then suddenly we get to exchange, and the solicitor at the top has to suddenly say, well, I haven't checked the file. No, I need this, I need that, I need this and that kind of thing.
Then big firms, a lot of the files have to be signed off from the most hierarchy, basically. So that can cause major delays.
Okay.
Other setbacks really is just making sure, when I'm chasing the sales, is making sure the buyer, like I say, has instructed their survey. We always prompt survey at the start of the sale, because one of the major delays is a buyer will say, no, I don't need a survey, and then their solicitor will ask the question at the end. And then
are you sure you don't want a survey? I recommend you did. And then suddenly it's that does happen. And I think as I kind of alluded to earlier on, another thing that I've certainly noticed in terms of when a vendor has had enough of a sale and it's taking ages, they often forget it took them 6, 8 weeks, so kind of 6 or 8 weeks for them to actually return that paperwork back right at the start, which delays those kind of draft contracts going out. So the buyer solicitors can't do anything during that time until those first bits are going across, really. So my little kind of tip would be, if you know you're moving and you 100% are moving, go and speak to your solicitor, register kind of that you're going to employ them, go through all that rigmarole, get that paperwork done, because then as soon as the sale is agreed, bang, they're ready to get everything across. I think that too many sellers wait until there's a buyer there to then initiate that, because it is a lot of paperwork, isn't it?
It is, and a lot, like say, a lot of sellers don't realise that paperwork starts the process. So I will call the seller and say, "Have you got this list of paperwork to fill out?" Yeah, going away for the weekend, going on holiday next week. No, can you sort it out before you go? And once I tell them that process can't start until their solicitor's got that paperwork, you find, oh, do that tonight, we'll hand deliver it tomorrow. You know, they don't. I don't think solicitors inform them that they need that paperwork back to start the process. So, massive valid point. I always make sure the seller's got their paperwork and tell them the importance of getting it back, basically.
Yeah, and my next kind of query is mistakes buyers and sellers make, and I think in terms of your mention of a survey happening late, that can be the worst thing a buyer can do, because if you're going to have a survey, get it done early doors, because there's nothing more aggravating or more of annoyance to a seller that when a survey's done, it picks up something and maybe there needs to be a little bit of a negotiation on it, you know, a couple of £100 or what have you. But if it's at the 11th hour, the seller will take a lot more umbrage to it and be a lot less forthcoming to negotiate than if it was within, the first three weeks of a deal being tied up, really. But any other kind of big mistakes or things that buyers or sellers make, really, do you think?
I think, like you say, the survey, to go back on that as well, because what people don't realise is if the buyer's had a few thousand off, they then have to get the revised mortgage offer. So then that's delayed as well. Or if they have a survey come back and it recommends they have quotes, getting builders, roofers, anything to get quotes, that takes months as well. It's not a quick turnaround.
And I'm sure everybody at home can understand on that front. I know I asked for a carpet quote from a chap that I know fairly well, and it took him, I think, about 6 weeks for him to come back to me with a carpet quote just for 3 rooms. So we have got a lot of builders that we do call upon and can get quotes obviously quicker than that. But it's if you're trying to do that, get the exchange done, get everything all within a week because everyone's agreed a completion date. That's where the stress arises from, really. So it's about making sure you do things in a chronological order. I know that we've kind of got a checklist that we're putting into place, which is going to go out to both the buyer and the seller on when the sales memorandums goes out to make sure everything's moving in the right direction. I think we've kind of answered this one. Where do mortgage and survey holdups come in? I think we've kind of covered that one, Gem, unless you've got anything to...
The other thing as well is, using a broker really helps with a mortgage lender directly, because if there's a hold up with the lender for any reason and the buyer doesn't understand why, it's a lot harder for him to call his own bank, where if he's got a broker, we have direct contact. They can explain it, to the buyer. And it's a lot quicker process. Having that direct contact for us can reassure our seller as well what the situation is, where if a buyer's going direct to the bank,
there's an element of unknown there, isn't
there? Ringing the bank is horrendous. It's not a quick phone call.
No, and also as a buyer, if you do go to a broker, then on another element, you've got the whole market. They can look at the whole market and find the best rate for you or the best product for you. Whereas if you go directly with a bank that you've always dealt with, the days are gone when they would kind of give you preferential
Oh,
treatment,
definitely,
unfortunately.
definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, that's another good point. Kind
Yeah.
of use a broker and
Yeah, surveys. It's important to, if you're going to get a survey done, get it early doors, like you say,
yeah,
for the reasons we mentioned. And just to use local surveyors, we have a lot of buyers come out of areas from
very true.
London,
Yeah,
and some turnaround with surveyors are 4 to 6 weeks to get in.
mm,
A report is generated in 5 to 10 days, depending on the what type of survey you're getting done.
yeah,
It's making sure if you use a local survey, you're getting the correct advice what survey you have done for that particular property.
yeah,
We've had, people try and book in building surveys on flats, and it's
yeah.
well,
I think that might be a surveying firm that has seen someone a little bit green and think, yeah, you need a level three, you need a full bore on
yeah.
that front. But yeah, we work with some local surveyors, but yeah, try and yeah, speak to people locally to
Mm.
where you are. I know that Colchester in 1880 had an earthquake, so there'll be elements of that written into some
Yeah,
reports and that
yeah.
kind of thing. It's just the general knowledge of knowing the area. So keeping the sale moving, I think we've covered a little bit on what can sellers do to speed things up. But is there anything else that kind of
Um,
sellers can do?
yeah, I mean, a big thing if they're selling a leasehold property is paying their solicitor straight away for the management pack and the landlord pack to come in, the LP1,
Okay.
because
Yep.
a lot of sellers will wait for their solicitor in weeks down the line to contact them, say, "Oh, you need to pay this fee so we can get the management pack." Some management companies will take up to 6 weeks to release that pack.
Right.
So early doors. You've got your paperwork back to your solicitor, and then
So is that the point, Jem, to say, right, here's that. I
yeah,
know that you're going to need this leasehold
yes,
management pack. Can you apply for it as well?
yes, yeah, definitely,
Okay.
definitely, yeah, definitely. Is paying their solicitor the fee so their solicitor can apply for the pack straight away.
Yeah.
Because if it is one of the leasehold companies that do take weeks to come in, it just eliminates that time
Mm.
frame.
And I suppose some solicitors will wait until which they are protecting their client in a way. They'll wait until it gets to a certain stage before spending that money out. Sometimes, Gemma.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always say if the buyer's mortgage, they're going to always 100% need that pack in. More
Yeah.
majority, it's only if it's a cash buy to take a views. But even in cash buyers these days, are very cautious and still want
Yeah.
all them questions answered to make sure service charges, ground rents, or any major works.
Yeah. The money, the funds are there to do
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
or what have you, and that goes hand in hand. That if you do have a survey, and then the surveyor comes and says, "Oh, yeah, that area of the roof looks like that's going to need doing," you want to make sure as a buyer that there's a reserve fund in place that is going to cover that potential
Mm,
work. Whereas if there isn't any reserve fund, or if the block isn't being properly managed, then that will fall to the leaseholders to stump up that cost to do it really.
yeah, definitely.
Anything else that sellers, so
Um,
leasehold state management packs, get those applied for pronto.
yeah.
Um,
I would
yeah.
say the only other thing really is where I come into play a bit more with hold up is if there's a chain involved. So
Okay.
if the seller has sold their property, the chain goes down and down via
Yeah.
agents, is just checking everyone's in place and we're all at the same stage as well. Because that can
Right.
be a major hold up. We
Yeah.
can be full steam ahead on our property, and it's all going nicely. But then the seller's property might be early doors because that agent hasn't chased that solicitor or the
Hmm.
solicitor hasn't returned the paperwork. So that's probably one of the biggest hold up is making sure all the ones below on the chain are at the same stage or it's progressing how it should do for
Yeah.
that time frame. Because we get that a lot. Some agents very proactive and
Yeah.
chase sales where some will just
Yeah. A lot of
let it
the
run its
lot,
course.
and that is unfortunately where I suppose our fee and our charge comes into play because of a lot of the online style cheaper agents sales progression
Oh gosh.
is non-existent, unfortunately. um, and if often if a buyer, if you've got an option of two buyers, and one of them's using a somebody local that are known and trusted, and one's sold through an online agent, and they're both offering the same, all identical, that could be a factor that is taken into account when you're negotiating or looking at accepting one of the offers, really. So that's another kind of piece on that front. But is there any kind of things that first time buyers maybe read into too much, and can they often over confuse themselves? Is there?
Yeah, I mean, that's why, again, part of sales progression is like explain the next steps for first time buyers and what needs to happen. Because, you get it all the time. They'll say, oh, I've had a survey done and my friends said I should be doing this and that, when it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Every sale is different for each property, for each buyer and seller. It's, there's no pattern, completely different. So I'll explain to a first time buyer, you don't need to get this quote, that quote, because the solicitors will sort that out, or, our vendor's already got the paperwork for that work that was done. So it's explaining that to the buyer before they start, getting recommendations from friends and family, and
who
making more work for themselves.
Don't necessarily know the situation of that one, or I bought a house 6 years ago and this is what I did, and it's often not necessary on that front. But a bit more about yourself now, Gem, in terms of, I suppose, most stressful chain you've ever handled. What was the kind of longest chain that we've been involved in?
Yeah, I can imagine everyone's perspective. It's the longer the chain, the worse it is. But I've had chains of 10 to 13, one being myself.
Yeah.
And that was fine. Because all the agents were on board, it was all good solicitors.
Yeah.
It was fine. Some of the most stressful chains are the smaller ones. And I'd probably say the most stressful chain is where they've used the wrong solicitor firm, and the buyer or seller will confirm that sort of halfway through the process, but then it's, let's not change solicitors now to we're halfway through. But they have been probably the most stressful chains, where the solicitor disappeared, or taking 3 weeks to respond, and they've probably been the most stressful, to be honest. Or a leasehold, where there's problems with the actual lease itself. That's we lost a sale a couple of months ago because the lease the leasehold company hasn't done the work they should have done. So the property's unmortgageable, basically. They haven't replaced their fire doors. They haven't done this. They haven't got their reserve fund. And we found this all out sort of 6 months down the process. So that was very stressful, especially for the seller. And then that reflects on us, because we wanted to get the seller sold, and we're not to know that until
it gets all the way through to that kind of thing.
Really,
But that's So I know that we're dealing with one at the moment, and it's literally there isn't any chain involved, and that's a fairly stressful situation. It's often when there's a deadline from one party where you don't fully know what's going on, or where that deadline's come from often, and if there's kind of lending kind of queries at the end of a mortgage or something like that, or someone's buying onwards which you weren't aware of. So it is always best that right from the outset is to be honest, open and transparent about the whole situation, what you're planning on doing. And if your situation does change, a couple of months into it, come and let us know straight away, or let your agent or your solicitors know straight away, because of otherwise, as a client, as a vendor, or a buyer, your stress levels rise up, and we're not to know the reason for the sudden kind of importance on it. So that would be one. The question here: ever saved a sale at the last second? I can imagine there's quite
a few.
quite a few there, Jem. But any that kind of really particularly springs to mind?
There's been loads over the years, but I had one last week.
Okay.
Last week, so we've got a chain here in the branch of 3, and then part of the chain at the start branches off. There was 8 underneath, and there was a lot of different agents, a lot of solicitors involved. It was very messy, and basically found our part of the chain wasn't ready, because the solicitor picked up something at the last minute. So completion date agreed, all the money's drawn down.
Oh, crikey. Right.
And the start of the property, the chain, needed that deadline to exchange complete because there was mortgage offers running out, people moving house, people
Right.
having babies.
Yeah.
So
Life.
yeah, so they did say if we don't exchange complete, the chain's going to fall through. So we saved it last minute because we got that chain exchange completed,
Okay.
and then they moved in with a family member
Okay.
and managed to store their stuff in one of our properties
Right.
on the vendor's agreement. So if
So agreed a key undertaking as such for
yes,
that to be
yeah,
saved there.
and
So
if that didn't happen, it was day before the
mm,
completion date, then that whole chain would have fell
would
apart
have gone.
because there was people with mortgages that couldn't re-get that mortgage. So
Mm,
it was literally had
yeah.
to happen or it wasn't happening.
And that is the difference there, isn't it, guys? If with that kind of adaptive thinking or kind of thinking outside the
Yeah.
box, right? How can we get over this problem? And I suppose it probably was, well, can these guys do anything there? No, right. Can these guys do anything there?
Mm.
No, right. Can these guys? Yes, right. So we can do that. Yep, we can agree a key undertaking with the onward. Lovely. And
Yeah.
that was how you managed to get over that.
And
So
solicitors will say on that sort of that stance of that chain, you need to go through the agents because
mm,
when there is, 15 solicitors involved, they only go sort of one property in front, one property behind. It
mm,
won't always filter up. So they will say you need to get the agent sorted out because we can't
yeah,
go away to the top. We
yeah,
don't know what the situation is up there.
yeah,
There's too many in the chain.
yeah.
So yeah, that was quite pleasurable to have that done. And the rest of the chain is completing this Friday.
Oh,
So
super
it's
stuff.
been
Good news.
yeah.
Good news.
Mm.
I was going to say, what's one thing everyone should know about sales progression? But I think that perfectly sums it up. That it
Mm.
isn't just black and white. It isn't just to pick up the phone. Are the draft contracts out? Yes. Right. Boom. Yeah. Draft contract. Have you applied for search? It's not as black and white as that. There is an element that is as black and white as that, Gemma. I suppose that you have got to do that. But when you get to those kind of push or pull moments, you've got to have that experience which you've had
Oh
over the
yeah.
last 15 years to be able to adapt and pivot to get something over the line for the clients on it. But anything else that you can think of that people should know about sales progression?
I think the biggest thing is just meeting everyone's expectations. When you said earlier about, um, if a seller is decided to buy on or they need to sell quick due to
Hmm.
personal situations, they don't inform us. The importance of informing us is just meeting everyone's expectations because
Mm,
buying and selling is one of the most stressful things.
yep.
And I think it's the no communication or the quietness that stresses people out
Yeah.
day by day. Where if you
Definitely.
can call a buyer or seller and say, we need to move in 30 days for this reason.
Mm,
Can you do that? It, it's meeting everyone's expectations because you might find out that buyer can't move for 2 months because they've
yeah.
got a job
Yeah.
relocation. So
Yeah.
it doesn't work for them. So it's sorting out that sort of situation at the start of the process rather
Yeah.
than getting towards the end
And then
and
it's
our seller saying, "Oh, we're completing this week," and then the buyer saying, "Actually, I'm in rental. I
mm,
need to give my landlord 2 months' notice, so I don't want to complete for 2 months." So
yeah.
it's just ironing out all them issues at the start, really,
Yeah.
and the meeting of expectations to keep everyone happy. Because, say, moving is stressful, but if you can do that at the start, it makes it a lot more smoother than
Yeah.
it can be.
So that really is one piece of advice for buyers and sellers is to be open and honest from the outset of what you are wanting to achieve from it. As a buyer, don't over promise and then under deliver on
Yeah,
it, because
definitely.
that could be, well, one of the worst things you can do, because that's going to just annoy the seller. And also as a seller, if you've got a time scale that you need to keep to, for whatever reason, then we need to know that from the start,
Mm.
to then advise that to the buyer, so then the buyer doesn't get annoyed, like, why am I being chased for this in this kind of
Mm.
time scale, really. But thanks, Gemma, for joining us. I don't know whether you wanted to add anything. I know we've been speaking for just 30 minutes, and we want to keep these kind of podcasts fairly short and to the point. But anything else that you'd like
Um,
to add at this moment?
No, I just think, like I say, at the start of the sale, it's just a communication is important, so everyone's from the same hymn sheet because that can be the biggest issue of a sale, really.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Super stuff. Super stuff. So, guys at home, if you are looking obviously at buying, selling, or renting, or would like any kind of tips or bits and bobs, then don't forget to follow us both on Spotify and also YouTube, as well as our other kind of social media platforms. And we'd love to hear from you. And if you've got any other ideas or would like us to speak to anyone else in the business, or perhaps you've got some questions for Gemma directly, then please do let us know, and we'd love to assist you. But thanks a lot. Cheers, guys.